Do you know the kind of ache that cuts deeper than the pain of surgery? It's not in the bones or in the flesh, but in the heart, when the very child you raised, the one you sacrificed everything for, leaves you abandoned when you need them the most. My name is Dorothy, and I am 68 years old. Life has not been gentle with me. I buried my husband Robert after 40 years of marriage, and from that day, I held on to only one anchor in this world, my son Michael. I told myself, Dorothy, as long as you have Michael, you're not alone. So when the doctor said I needed a hip replacement surgery, I wasn't afraid. Michael promised me over and over, "Don't you worry, Mom. I'll pick you up. I'll be there." Those words carried me through the sleepless nights before the operation. But after the surgery, when the anesthesia wore off and I waited for my boy, I discovered a truth that cut me open in a way no doctor's scalpel ever could. I lay there in that hospital bed, the smell of disinfectant stinging my nose, clutching my phone like it was a lifeline. Every time the door creaked open, my heart leapt, thinking it was Michael. But hours went by. Other patients left with their loved ones, wheeled out with smiles of relief. While I sat waiting, my pride shrinking with each tick of the clock. Finally, a message buzzed on my phone. My hands shook as I opened it. Do you know what my son wrote? Just 5 words. Figure it out yourself. At that moment, my heart shattered. The boy I worked 2 jobs for, the boy I skipped meals for so he could eat, the boy I gave everything to, had left me to fend for myself after surgery. Before I continue my story, let me pause to pray for you. Yes, you who are listening right now. May your children never forget the sacrifices you made. May your bodies be strong even in your 60s, 70s, and 80s. And if you're walking through loneliness, may you be surrounded by kindness. And please subscribe to this channel and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. I want to know how far our stories reach. I wish I could tell you that message was just a mistake, that Michael came rushing in after and held my hand. But that never happened. What followed was humiliation in front of strangers, a battle with pain, and a truth about my son that I had refused to see for far too long. But my story does not end with abandonment. No. What began as betrayal turned into strength I never knew I had. I discovered secrets my late husband tried to warn me about. I faced dangers I never imagined at my age, and I stood up for myself in a way that made me realize I was not just a mother, not just a widow. I was a woman who could still fight back. Stay with me because you're about to hear how a 68-year-old grandmother, left broken and humiliated by her own child, found the courage to reclaim her dignity, protect her home, and serve justice in a way no one expected. When the doctor told me that I needed hip replacement surgery, I was scared. At 68, surgery isn't something you take lightly. I had lost Robert, my husband of 4 decades, and walking into that operating room without him by my side felt like walking into a storm with no umbrella. But through all that fear, I held on to one thought. Michael will be there for me. Michael is my only child. From the moment I held him in my arms, I gave him every ounce of my love. When Robert got sick, it was Michael who promised me he'd always take care of me. And he said the same thing in the days before my surgery. His voice over the phone was steady, comforting. "Don't worry, Mom. I'll be waiting for you. As soon as you're out, I'll take you home." Those words gave me courage. I trusted him completely. In fact, when the nurses asked if someone was coming for me, I smiled with pride and said, "Yes, my son. He'll be here." The morning of the operation, I kept replaying his promise in my mind. As the anesthesiologist prepared me, I whispered a little prayer. "Lord, just let me wake up safe. My boy will be waiting for me." And when I woke up sore and dizzy, the very first thought I had was, "He'll be here soon." I truly believed it. That belief carried me through the hours that followed, until reality hit me like a brick. When I opened my eyes after the surgery, the first thing I saw was the white ceiling. My body felt heavy, my hip aching, but I kept telling myself, "It's fine. Michael is on his way. He promised." Nurse Brenda came in with a kind smile. She said, "You did well, Dorothy. Your son will be here soon, right?" I nodded with pride, almost bragging, "Yes, he's coming for me." So I waited. 1 hour passed. Then another. Patients who had their surgeries after me were already being wheeled out, their families hugging them, carrying their bags, whispering comfort into their ears. I watched them leave while my chair stayed empty. Every time footsteps echoed in the hallway, I perked up, only for the sound to fade away. I picked up my phone and sent Michael a gentle message. "Hi, honey. I'm out. They said I'm ready whenever you arrive. I can't wait to see you." Minutes passed. No reply. The nurses started exchanging looks, their eyes glancing at the clock, then at me. I could feel the shift. They didn't see me as a proud mother anymore. They saw me as an old woman left waiting. Some whispered outside my door, and though I couldn't hear their words, I knew what they were thinking. My cheeks burned. I pulled the blanket up to my chin to hide my trembling. I told myself, he's stuck in traffic. That's all. He'll walk in any second. But the longer I sat there, the more that confidence melted into shame. 3 hours after my surgery, I was still sitting alone. Every empty moment cut deeper than the pain in my hip. My phone finally buzzed, and my heart leapt with relief. At last. My boy hadn't forgotten me. With shaky fingers, I opened the message, expecting his familiar words of comfort. But what I saw, I still can't believe a son could send this to his mother. 5 words. "Figure it out yourself." That was it. No sorry. No, I'll come later. Just a cold dismissal, like I was an inconvenience he didn't have time for. I stared at the screen, hoping maybe I misread it. But the letters didn't change. My chest tightened. My hands trembled so hard I almost dropped the phone. I typed back, begging. "Michael, please. I just had surgery. I can't stand. I need you." No response. I waited, each second dragging like an hour. Nothing. The silence screamed louder than any words he could have sent. The humiliation I felt earlier in front of the nurses now burned hotter. I had spoken so proudly of my dependable son, only for them to see me abandoned like a burden. My throat went dry, my eyes stung, but the tears wouldn't fall. They froze inside me, turning into something heavier. That moment, sitting alone in that hospital bed, I realized something I never wanted to admit. My son had chosen to leave me in my weakest hour. The boy I raised, the boy I sacrificed everything for, had turned his back on me. My hip throbbed, but it was nothing compared to the pain in my chest. That text wasn't just words. It was a knife, cutting through decades of love, loyalty, and trust. After that message, I felt my whole world tilt. The pain in my hip was sharp, but the pain in my heart made me feel like I couldn't breathe. I sat there staring at the phone, whispering to myself, he'll change his mind. He'll walk through that door. But deep down, I knew he wouldn't. Nurse Brenda returned, her smile gone. She shifted uncomfortably before saying, "Dorothy, I'm so sorry, but we need this room. Another patient is waiting. Do you have anyone else we can call?" I shook my head. My husband was gone. My sister-in-law lived across the country. And Michael, the one person I thought I could lean on, had abandoned me with 5 cruel words. Brenda sighed. "We can call you a taxi." A taxi. As if I could climb into a cab alone, with stitches in my hip and a bag I couldn't even lift. The thought was almost laughable, if it hadn't been so humiliating. I lowered my head, feeling smaller than I had in years. The whispers from the hallway grew louder in my imagination. I knew what they were thinking. Her own son left her. The shame cut deeper than the surgery itself. I pressed my phone to my chest, praying for strength, wondering how I would get through this day. My body was broken, but worse. My spirit felt shattered. And I must ask you, has anyone in your family ever broken your trust this badly? Have you ever felt abandoned by the very person you thought would protect you? Just when I thought I would be wheeled out of that hospital like some forgotten parcel, another nurse entered my room. She was younger than Brenda, with dark hair pulled into a neat bun. Her name tag read Chloe. She looked at me differently, not with pity, not with judgment. She sat on the edge of my bed and lowered her voice. "Mrs. Thompson, I heard what happened with your son. That's not right. You shouldn't be left here alone after surgery." Her words pierced through my shame. I wanted to answer, but all I could do was press my lips together to keep from breaking down. Chloe gently touched my hand. "You don't have to figure this out by yourself. I'll make a phone call." Before I could object, she walked out with quick steps. My heart pounded as I wondered who she was calling. I had no one left. Who could possibly come for me now? A short while later, the door opened again, and this time Chloe wasn't alone. Behind her stood a woman I hadn't seen in years, my cousin Lillian. Strong, no nonsense, the kind of woman whose voice could silence a whole room. She had been a high school principal before retiring, and she carried that same authority wherever she went. The moment her eyes landed on me, she shook her head. "Dorothy, I heard what Michael did. I can't say I'm surprised. He's always been wrapped up in himself." Her bluntness cut straight to the truth. For the first time that day, I felt a strange sense of relief. Someone finally said out loud what I had been too afraid to admit. Lillian didn't waste time. She thanked Chloe firmly, then turned to me. "Let's get you out of here, Dorothy. You don't belong sitting in this place any longer than you have to." With her help, I got dressed slowly, every movement a reminder of the fresh cut in my hip. She didn't hover with false sympathy. She just steadied me when I swayed and slipped my shoes on without a single sigh of annoyance. It was the kind of help that didn't make me feel weak. It made me feel seen. When the wheelchair arrived, Lillian was the one who held the handles. "No offense to the nurses, but I'm not letting anyone else roll my cousin out of here. Let's go." As we moved down the corridor, I could feel the eyes of the staff on me. Earlier, those looks had filled me with humiliation. But with Lillian's steady stride behind me, chin high and eyes forward, I didn't feel so small anymore. Once we reached her car, she helped me into the passenger seat. Every motion was careful, yet firm, just like her personality. The door closed with a thud, sealing me away from the whispers of the hospital. We drove in silence at first, the hum of the engine filling the air. I stared out at the city, watching people hurry along the sidewalks, each of them heading somewhere, while my world felt like it had stopped. Finally, Lillian broke the silence. "Dorothy, I know you don't want to hear it, but Michael showed his true colors today. You gave him everything, and he repaid you with betrayal. That's the kind of selfishness that doesn't come from one bad day. It comes from a pattern." Her words stung, but I couldn't deny them. Deep down, I knew she was right. The city lights blurred past my window as we drove, and with every block, the weight in my chest grew heavier. Lillian's words echoed in my ears. "It comes from a pattern." I swallowed hard, then spoke, my voice trembling. "Lillian, I haven't told anyone this. Not even Michael. After Robert passed, I tried to hold everything together. The pension, the mortgage, the medical bills, Lord, they swallowed me whole." Lillian's hands tightened on the steering wheel. She didn't interrupt, so I continued. "I sold my mother's jewelry to help Michael with the down payment for his house. I told myself it was an investment in his future, in our family. Later, when money got tight, I took a small loan against my own house. I thought Michael would help me cover it, but those promises kept slipping through his fingers. For the first time all day, tears finally fell, hot against my cheeks. I thought he was my safety net. I thought as long as I had him, I would never fall." The car grew quiet except for the rhythm of the road. Lillian glanced at me, her expression fierce but softened with love. "Dorothy, you are stronger than you give yourself credit for. Depending on Michael didn't make you weak. It made you a mother. But you can't keep letting him use that against you." Her words hit me hard. I realized I had spent years convincing myself Michael would step in whenever I struggled. I had ignored the broken promises, the excuses, the short visits that grew shorter every year. I leaned back, closing my eyes. For the first time, I allowed myself to admit the truth. I had been blinded by love. As we crossed the bridge out of the city, the streetlights stretched like pearls across the water. My body ached, but it was the ache in my heart that consumed me. I whispered, almost to myself, I built my life around Michael. I told myself he was my reason to keep going after Robert died. I ignored every sign that he was slipping away from me. I thought if I gave enough, my money, my time, my love, he would give back when I needed him most. Lillian kept her eyes on the road, her jaw set. "That's the problem, Dorothy. You made him the foundation when he should have just been a part of your life. A son should be a blessing, not a burden. Don't you see? You've carried him on your back for years, and when it was time for him to carry you, he let go." Her words pierced straight through me. It wasn't just that Michael failed me that day. He had been failing me for years, and I had been too blind, too hopeful, to admit it. My faith in him had become my weakness. I turned my face toward the window so Lillian wouldn't see the tears sliding down my cheeks. But I wasn't just crying for what Michael did in that hospital. I was mourning the years I wasted believing he would be my anchor. Taking a shaky breath, I turned back to her. Maybe you're right, Lillian. Maybe it's time I stopped leaning on him. Because today proved that when I needed him most, I was left alone. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The hum of the tires was the only sound. And in that silence, I felt a new seed take root inside me. Not anger, not yet, but a raw awareness that my son was not the man I thought he was. And now, let me ask you, has anyone ever stepped in to rescue you when your own family turned away? Someone unexpected who gave you strength in your weakest hour? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your stories. When Lillian finally helped me settle into my house, I thought the worst of the day was behind me. My body was sore, my heart was bruised, but at least I was home. I reached for the small locked box in Robert's old study, where I kept my medication. As I opened it, something caught my eye, an envelope I didn't remember placing there. It was new, crisp, with the seal of a law office printed neatly across the top. My pulse quickened as I slid it open. The words inside nearly stopped my breath. According to this document, my husband's estate, our house, the savings, even the life insurance, was not left to me. It was left to someone I had never heard of. A stranger's name, printed in black ink, stared back at me like an insult. My hands shook so badly the letter almost slipped from my fingers. Robert and I had made our plans years ago. We agreed everything would be mine, so I could live out my days in peace, and then whatever remained would pass to Michael. That was the way it was supposed to be. But this news will change everything. It stripped me of the home Robert and I built together. It stripped me of security. It stripped me of the life we had planned. I clutched the edge of the desk, gasping for air. No, this can't be real. My mind raced. Robert hadn't been of sound mind in those final days. He could barely hold a pen, let alone change a will. My heart hammered in my chest as fear crept in. Who would benefit from taking everything from me? I sat frozen at Robert's desk, the lawyer's envelope still trembling in my hands. My eyes darted around the study, as though the walls themselves could give me answers. That's when I noticed the bottom of the metal box seemed odd, slightly raised, as if something was tucked underneath. With trembling fingers, I pressed against it until a false layer shifted loose. Beneath it lay two more envelopes. One was fresh and official-looking, but it was the other that made my heart pound. Yellowed at the edges, addressed in Robert's familiar handwriting, for my dearest Dorothy. I could barely breathe as I opened it. His writing was shakier than I remembered, the pen's strokes uneven, but the voice on the page was still his. My love, if you're reading this, I am no longer by your side. I need you to know something. I have been pressured to sign papers I do not understand. They tell me you cannot manage on your own. They whisper lies when I am weakest. I fear they will trick me into signing away everything we built. Please be careful. There is a small box hidden in my workshop. Inside is the real will. That one leaves everything to you. Do not give up our home. Fight for it. Yours forever, Robert. Tears blurred the page. My Robert had known. Even in his fading strength, he tried to protect me. He saw the trap being laid and left me a trail to the truth. I pressed the letter to my chest, whispering, "Thank you, Robert. You were still looking after me, even as you slipped away." For the first time that day, my fear shifted into something else, a fire, faint but steady. If someone thought they could erase me from my own life, they had another thing coming. I called out to Lillian, my hands still shaking from Robert's letter. She hurried in, and I showed her the words my husband had written with what little strength he had left. Her eyes hardened as she read. "Dorothy, this proves he was being cornered. We need to find that box." So together, we went into the garage. I hadn't stepped foot in there since Robert passed. The smell of sawdust and oil still clung to the air, just like he had left it. My heart ached as I spotted his old red-handled wrench. I remembered how many times he'd used it, how he would whistle while working late into the night. With Lillian's help, I lifted the wrench, and just as Robert promised, a small key lay beneath it. My fingers trembled as I picked it up. Back in the study, we pulled away a shelf, and there, tucked into the wall, was a black metal box. My chest tightened as I turned the key and opened it. Inside, resting above a faded wedding photo of Robert and me, was a document. The real will. My breath caught as I began to read. This version left everything. Our home, the life insurance, every last asset to me, just as Robert had said. Relief flooded my chest. For a brief moment, I felt safe again. But then my eyes caught on something near the bottom. A single name, listed as recipient of a small personal item. Not Michael. Not any family member. The name was Chloe. I froze. Chloe, the young nurse who had shown me kindness at the hospital. Why would Robert include her? Why would her name be here at all? The relief I had felt evaporated, replaced by confusion and unease. What connection could she possibly have had to my husband? I stared at Chloe's name over and over, my mind racing. Could it be a mistake? Had Robert been tricked again? Or had there been something he never told me? Dorothy, Lillian said sharply, bringing me back. Don't get lost in that page. Whoever added her name, whatever reason, it doesn't change the truth. This will prove the house is yours. That's what matters. I wanted to believe her, but a knot twisted in my stomach. Why Chloe? Why her of all people? Before I could make sense of it, a sharp knock rattled the front door. My heart jumped. It was late, too late for neighbors. Lillian and I exchanged a wary glance. The knock came again, louder, more demanding. I shuffled to the window and peeked through the curtain. A sleek black car sat in the driveway. At the door stood a man in a suit, a briefcase in hand. By the car waited two large men, silent and watchful. My breath caught. I recognized the man in the suit from the letterhead. He was from that law office. I pulled back quickly. It's them, I whispered. They've come for the will. The pounding on the door grew harsher. My pulse raced, my knees weak. Lillian's face tightened, but her eyes were steady. Stay back, Dorothy. Don't open that door. Fear wrapped around me, but anger pushed through it. First Michael abandoned me. Then I discovered the forged will, and now strangers were standing outside my home, trying to take everything Robert and I had built. I clutched Robert's letter in my hand, whispering under my breath, I won't let you take this from me. The pounding at the door grew louder, each thud echoing through my chest. I felt like the walls themselves were shaking. My grip tightened on Robert's letter, but my body trembled so badly I could hardly stand. Lillian stepped forward, her voice low but firm. Dorothy, get away from the door. I backed into the hallway as she pulled out her phone. Calmly, with no hesitation, she dialed. This is the non-emergency line, yes? I'm reporting suspicious activity. 3 men in a black car, one at the door, possibly trying to force entry. Her tone was sharp, professional, like she had dealt with worse in her years as a principal. Hearing her so steady gave me a sliver of strength. Through the peephole, I saw the suited man glance at his watch, then noticed Lillian speaking on the phone. His expression shifted, and he muttered something to the men by the car. One of them slid a white business card under the door, and without another word, they turned back, climbing into their vehicle. Moments later, the engine roared, and the car sped away just as the faint sound of sirens began to approach in the distance. My knees nearly gave out with relief. I clutched Lillian's arm, whispering, If you hadn't been here. She squeezed my hand tightly. That's why I came. You're not alone, Dorothy. Not anymore. We stood there in the quiet that followed, surrounded by papers, envelopes, and the weight of Robert's warnings. But the fear hadn't left me completely. It lingered, reminding me that those men could return. I turned toward you, and I must ask, what would you have done if dangerous men came to your door, demanding something that wasn't theirs? Would you have opened it, faced them, or done as we did and held your ground? Tell me in the comments, I want to know. The next morning, I didn't wait for fear to creep back in. Lillian drove me straight to Michael's house. I was still sore from surgery, every step a reminder of my frailty, but anger carried me forward. Michael's home stood proud in the suburbs, The very house I had helped him buy with money I never should have parted with. It looked perfect on the outside, neatly trimmed lawn, fresh paint, but to me it had become a monument to betrayal. When he opened the door and saw me standing there with Lillian at my side, his eyes widened in shock. "Mom? You should be resting. What are you doing here?" I steadied myself on my cane and answered firmly, "We're not stepping inside, Michael. We'll talk right here where the neighbors can hear if they have to. I won't be dismissed this time." He looked between us, uneasy. "Mom, please, you don't need to do this out here. Come in, we can talk." But I didn't budge. I pulled out the documents, the forged will, Robert's letter, and the real will I had found in the black box. My hands trembled, but my voice was steady. "I know what you did, Michael. I know you worked with that lawyer. He came to my house last night with his men. They wanted me out. Tell me the truth." His face went pale, his lips parting as though the air had been knocked from him. For the first time, my son didn't look confident. He looked cornered. Michael's shoulders slumped as if the weight of the papers in my hand had crushed him. He ran a hand through his hair, avoiding my eyes. "Mom, I didn't mean for it to get this far." Lillian crossed her arms, her glare sharp. "You didn't mean it? You left your mother in a hospital bed and nearly handed her house to criminals." He winced at her words. "I was desperate. I got into an investment deal that went bad. I thought it would be quick money, something that would change everything. Instead, I lost more than I ever had. I borrowed from the wrong people, and they came after me. That lawyer, Kenneth, he said he could make it all disappear. He promised if I let him handle Dad's estate, he'd clear my debts." I felt my stomach twist. "So you sold me out to pay your bills?" He shook his head quickly, tears welling in his eyes. "I thought it was just the house. He said you wanted to sell anyway, that you couldn't keep up with it. He told me it would be easier if he changed the paperwork. I swear I didn't know he planned to take everything." His voice cracked, and for a moment he looked like the little boy who once clung to my skirt. But then I remembered the text message. "Figure it out yourself." That was no boy's mistake. That was a man's choice. I steadied myself and looked him straight in the eye. "You didn't just abandon me, Michael. You betrayed me. You let strangers come for my home, for the life your father and I built. Do you even understand what you've done?" For a long moment, the air between us was heavy with silence. I searched Michael's face, hoping to see even a shred of the son I raised, the boy who used to run into my arms after school, who cried at his father's funeral, who promised he would never let me stand alone. But all I saw was a man who had traded his integrity for a quick escape. "You didn't just forget me at the hospital," I said, my voice trembling with anger. "You left me helpless on purpose, while you schemed with strangers to strip me of everything I had left." He covered his face with both hands, his shoulders shaking. "Mom, I didn't know how to stop it. Once I agreed to work with them, I was trapped. They told me if I backed out, they'd come after me, and after you." Lillian cut in sharply. "So your solution was to hand your mother over to the wolves? That's not desperation, Michael. That's cowardice." His hands dropped, revealing eyes red with tears. "I thought it was the only way. I thought I could keep you safe by letting them take the house. I didn't realize they'd go further. I felt my legs weaken, but I forced myself to stay upright. Safe." My voice rose, trembling with fury. "You call it safety when your mother is left in a hospital bed, humiliated and abandoned? You call it safety when men come pounding on my door, threatening to throw me out of my own home?" He looked down at the ground, unable to meet my gaze. And in that moment, the truth sank into me like ice. Michael hadn't just been careless. He had chosen himself, his debts, his comfort, over my survival. He hadn't only abandoned me, he had delivered me into danger. I steadied myself on my cane, my heart pounding harder than it had in years. My voice shook, but it wasn't from weakness. It was from the storm of anger inside me. "You know what hurts most, Michael? It's not that you made a bad deal. It's not even that you owe money. People make mistakes. What breaks me is that, instead of coming to me, instead of trusting me, you chose to lie. You left me in a hospital room, vulnerable and humiliated, because you were too afraid to face your own mess. You didn't just let me down, you betrayed me. Tears streamed down his cheeks. "I'm sorry, Mom. I really am. I don't know how to fix this." I shook my head slowly. Sorry doesn't erase what you did. Sorry doesn't erase the fear I felt when men came pounding on my door. Sorry doesn't erase the truth that you were willing to sacrifice me to save yourself. For the first time in my life, I saw my son not as the boy I raised, but as a man who had made choices, selfish choices that endangered his own mother. That realization cut deeper than any wound I had ever known. Lillian placed a firm hand on my shoulder. Her silence spoke louder than words. She wanted me to see Michael for who he really was. I turned my eyes back to him. "I will survive this, Michael. I will protect what your father left me. But you have to live with what you did. And I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive you. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Would you forgive a child who betrayed you so deeply, or would you cut them off forever? Tell me in the comments, because I want to hear your heart." The morning after I confronted Michael, I knew there was no turning back. Fear wanted me to stay quiet, to pretend it was over. But Robert's letter burned in my hands like a reminder. Do not give up this house. Fight for it. He had trusted me with his last words, and I couldn't let him down. I gathered everything, every scrap of truth that proved what had been done to me. The forged will from the law office, Robert's shaky but determined letter, and the real will locked away in the black box. Each page was a piece of my husband's voice, each line a shield he had left for me, even after his death. But I needed more than paper. I needed someone who could stand with me. That's when I called Chloe, the young nurse who had first shown me kindness in the hospital. When I told her what I discovered, her voice softened but carried resolve. "Mrs. Thompson, I remember your husband. He wanted to be certain his wishes were honored. I signed as a witness. If anyone questions it, I'll stand before them myself." I held the phone tightly, tears spilling down my cheeks. How strange that this young woman, a near stranger, would defend me when my own son had turned against me. Life has a way of revealing who truly belongs in your corner. With Lillian by my side, I carried everything to the authorities. We laid the documents on the desk, explained the threats at my door, and described how a widow was nearly stripped of her home by deceit. The officer looked through the evidence slowly, then met my eyes with a firm nod. "Mrs. Thompson, you've done the right thing. We'll take it from here." For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of safety. The weeks that followed were filled with investigations and questions. But justice has a way of catching up, even when it seems slow. The lawyer Kenneth was arrested after a search of his office revealed more than just my stolen will. He had orchestrated similar schemes with other grieving families, twisting their sorrow into his opportunity. And Michael, my son, could no longer hide behind excuses. His emails, his messages, his signatures, they tied him directly to the scheme. He wasn't an innocent bystander. He was an accomplice. I will never forget the day I heard his voice on the phone after the arrest. He wept, begging me to help him, to speak for him. "Mom, I didn't know it would go this far. Please, you're all I have left." But the words felt hollow. Where was that plea when I lay in a hospital bed, alone and humiliated? Where was that desperation when men pounded on my door, trying to strip me of my home? Michael's wife left him once the truth surfaced. His employer cut ties, his reputation shattered. The house I helped him buy went up for sale to cover his debts. He had traded everything, his dignity, his family, his future, for empty promises from a corrupt man. It should have broken me to watch my only child fall so low. But instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: strength. For once, the burden of carrying his mistakes no longer rested on my shoulders. With the truth finally secured, I turned back to my own life. I kept the house just long enough to close the chapter properly. Then I sold it, not because anyone forced me to, but because I chose to. I found a young couple who had long admired the place, and I handed it over knowing it would be loved again. With the money, I bought a modest condo with a small garden. It was peaceful, manageable, and mine. Every flower I planted reminded me that even in late seasons, new life can still bloom. I remember sitting in that garden one evening, the sun dipping low, and realizing I had something more valuable than wealth or property. I had my dignity back. I was no longer the woman abandoned in a hospital bed, no longer the widow trembling at her front door. I was Dorothy, a woman who had walked through betrayal and humiliation but refused to let it define her. Michael reached out months later. His voice was quieter, stripped of arrogance. "Mom, I know I don't deserve it, but I'm sorry. I've lost everything. Please forgive me." I listened, letting his words hang in the air. But for the first time, I felt no desperation to fix him, no burning ache for his approval. I had carried him long enough. "Michael," I said softly, "I hope you find your way. But I have found mine." I ended the call with no tears, no anger, just peace. So here I stand today, telling you my story, not as a victim but as a survivor. Betrayal tried to break me. Loneliness tried to silence me. Greed tried to take everything Robert and I built. But I fought back and I won. And I want you to know, my dear ones listening, no matter your age, no matter your pain, you still have power. You still have dignity. Do not let anyone, not even your own blood, take that from you. When I look back on everything I went through, the hospital, the text message, the forged papers, the men at my door, I see a story not of weakness, but of awakening. For so many years, I believed my life was held together by one thread, my son. I clung to him as though he was the only anchor left after Robert passed. But what I learned, painfully and clearly, is that no anchor built on selfishness will hold. The betrayal cut me deeply, not because I lost possessions, but because I had placed my worth in someone who treated me as disposable. That was the hardest truth to face. But in facing it, I found my strength. I realized that I could stand on my own, even at 68, even when my body was fragile and my heart was heavy. And that, my dear ones, is what I want you to take from my story. You are stronger than you believe. You can endure more than you imagine. And sometimes, the very moment you think you are broken beyond repair is the moment you discover your true resilience. I will not tell you that forgiving Michael came easily, because it didn't. I still carry the scars of what he did. But I chose to stop letting his choices control my life. I chose to build a new life for myself, one filled with peace, dignity, and the freedom to live on my own terms. That choice was the greatest act of love I could give myself. Now let me pause here as a grandmother speaking from her heart and pray for you, the ones who are watching, listening, perhaps carrying your own silent burdens. May your bodies remain strong as the years pass, that you may walk without pain and rest without fear. May your families hold you with love, not abandon you when you need them most. May your children, your grandchildren, or even neighbors and friends remember the sacrifices you made and treat you with honor. And if you face loneliness, may you find kindness in unexpected places, just as I found it in a young nurse named Chloe. I know some of you listening may feel forgotten, pushed aside, or undervalued because of your age. But hear me clearly, you matter. Your voice matters. Your story matters. Do not let anyone convince you otherwise. If this story touched you, if it reminded you of your own journey, please subscribe to this channel. Share this video with others who might need strength. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from? What struggles have you faced? I want to hear from you, because your stories give this space meaning. As I sit today in my little garden, tending to the flowers that bloom under the sun, I realize that my life is not defined by betrayal, but by recovery. Not by what was taken, but by what I chose to build afterward. That is the lesson I carry forward. Even in loss, there can be renewal. So let us walk together, not as strangers, but as family across the miles. Let us remind one another that in our 60s, 70s, 80s, and beyond, we are still here, still valuable, still deserving of respect and love. Thank you for watching.